Gert studied at the Angewandte here, and he wrote a dissertation on drawing, as I translated rather in a free way, drawing as a cultural technique, the Politiken und Poetik der Zeichnung. And he is studying on Kiesler for quite long, and to be honest, Gert wrote some texts that I really envy him that I didn't write them myself. And today he's giving a presentation and follows up with the laboratory, but I think in a quite different way. Thank you very much.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity, and thank you for listening. The purpose of my presentation is to describe and analyze Kiesler's approach of scientification of design as it can be found in his publications. Kiesler is not presented here as a visionary of modernism, but he can be regarded as a forerunner of scientification of design, and it is attempted in his design thinking and design research. Kiesler resembles rather the figure of the bricoleur who believes everything to be connected with everything, compounds human, non-human players, and uses narrative knowledge as a productive force. I start with the end, with the question, what is heretic, and the premise. Kiesler wanted to overcome functionalism, but was interested in multifunctionalism. He wanted to overcome a culture of mass production, but rationalized needs and activities. He wanted to overcome biomimicry, but extended features of nature to inanimate objects. Kiesler's frequently made metaphorical statements reinforce the impression that his theory lacks accuracy. His publications seem unduly over-adapted for the general public and even populist sometimes. But for me, this is a positive aspect. I see this in a positive way. So I've asked Michael Hagner, a specialist in philosophy of science, worin besteht jetzt der analytische Mehrwert, wenn wir im Zusammenhang mit Friedrich Kiesler von Pseudowissenschaft sprechen? So what's the purpose to make such assumptions as we can find in the literature? What is hurting me, because I take the notion very seriously and I don't play around with sort of functionalism and with pseudoscience. And the answer to this question could be as simple as that Kiesler's thought style, Fleck, rather does not fit into the perspectives of modernist thinking against the background of his poetic approach and his theoretical estrangements. He appears to be a heretic of modernism. So, at least I would like to mention Steffi Kiesler. She was essential for her husband as a partner, supporter, and a muse, playing a part comparable to that of Gala Eluard Dali, or Elsie Kromek, or Lillian Gilbreth. So, quite shortly, because we already have seen this material, in the 1930s, Kiesler published numerous articles elaborating his leitmotif Correalism about theater and cinema buildings, animal stables, sound effects, the large glass. There is little available on his design theory. His remarks seem to be abridged, and sometimes even mysterious. The papers mentioned as follows refer specifically to Kiesler's design theory of Correalism. For me, I would try to sum up these papers to certain phases or eras which are important in Kiesler's thinking. And we have to deal with them. But I cannot go into now in depth. So, the theoretical background, for me, there is one very important notion from him. If science is the effort to explain nature in terms of mechanics, architecture is the science of rebuilding nature in terms of hygiene, its health. This seems a very strong narrative in the work of, in his theoretical work. So also important for his theoretical background is his work at the International Theatre Arts Institute. So this theatre school in New York, there have been numerous very interesting people there, as Norina Vacciabelli and already Bess Menzentik, and Kiesler should be implemented for the areas stage decoration, design, theatre and architecture. So space research. Metaphors of space permeate Kiesler's entire work, e.g. space stage, space theatre, city in space, space house, space soul, space blossom. In his later years, his students called Kiesler Professor Space. At the outset of his work, he introduced the space stage, with which he dealt with space in its own right as a medium for design. Correlation enables a relationship between at least two objects. That's initial for his theory. Kiesler referred here to the relationship between stage, actors, and spectators, and also a correlation between actors and audience. Interesting for me was this formula. The catalogue of the International Exhibition of New Stage Machinery in Vienna 1924, edited by Kiesler, summarized experimental stage designs of its time. And also included was this formula he developed. Kiesler showed a metaphor of an integral for a stage design which he published in connection with his space stage for Woodstock. I asked mathematicians what can this formula be for? And they told me the state of light and sound at times of utmost acceleration of the object determine the quality of the construction. Kiesler probably know the style formula in his student years in Vienna from Gottfried Semper. He developed the idea that works of art can be described in mathematical terms. He regarded a work of art as a result of a function of an amount of agents, of forces, which are variable coefficients of their embodiment. Semper describes a work of art, epsilon and its agents x, epsilon, z, minor. The agents or coefficients are connected with each other and influence each other. allusion to Einstein can be found in this statement. There is not so much known on this connection, but we can be aware that Kiesler read and get known of the theory from Albert Einstein. Kiesler's opinion on Albert Einstein's general theory of relativity, or Hermann Minkowski's concept of space-time, or Siegfried Gideon's idea, is not known so well. Physics in the 1920s defined space as a constituted by a relationship to a moving point which influenced Cubism also. Einstein dismissed an analogy between his theory and Cubism. Quote Einstein, "This new language of art has nothing in common with the theory of relativity." Quote, and a connection between Kiesler and Einstein can be assumed, considering the influence of Theo von Duisburg. A lecture given by Duisburg in Vienna in 1922 and in Weimar, called Der Wille zum Stil, was published in a journal of the same name. Duisburg used the term space body, Raumkörper, by analogy with music, sound, sculpture, and painting. The space body needs to be broken down to overcome three-dimensional space. It's also difficult, but maybe we hear further things about the connection Frederick Kiesler and Siegfried Gideon. Kiesler's book about portals and shops, published in 1929, is very interesting concerning the Correalities theme. It contains implicit indications pointing to his theory of Correalism. Actors and spectators, you see the street and the portal of a shop window. Actors and spectators and physical and mental forces were thought to be in correlation. He often linked actor and spectator, shop window and high street, person and environment, conscious and subconscious, and space and time. So summing up, the notion biotechnique this notion has a long history, as you can see here. And finally, one very strong influence for Kiesler is, as it can be proven, is Patrick Geddes and Arthur Thompson with their notion of biotechniques. And Kiesler especially adapted this notion to biotechnique. He wanted to make a connection to the humans and their tools and their objects, especially. Yeah? So, before I can show, okay, we have seen it often, very often, it's a very central diagram from Kiesler, our environmental correlation chart. And this chart does have a very great similarity to a chart brought by Patrick Geddes and Arthur Thompson in their research, connecting a human with the environment and also with the functional environment. And this is really a very central point. That Kiesler coupled the technical objects with an associated milieu. He always thinks the associated milieu with the object. He do not separate the technical objects. Yeah, as you have here the human, the technology, the nature, and the man coupled in these interrogating forces. So, the studio laboratory issue. Kiesler's laboratory is in line with very essential progressive experiments in design education since the Harvard architectural laboratory, which is not here shown, but which is before the Huttema laboratory from Nikolai. I'm sorry for that reductionist, essentialist categorization, but it helps me to get in touch with the different learning teaching methods and the different narratives of these programs. And this laboratory studio paradigm, today we have very strong in the Fab Lab realized, but its history is very old. It's nearly more than 100 years old. And I try to deal with certain aspects of this laboratory. And Kiesler's laboratory you see here in the middle row. He came afterwards to the Gilbert Rodi, New York laboratory, where Kiesler also have been in the advisory board. Yeah, he worked in advisory board. So, studio laboratory. The scientific team from a small group of students, as you know, catalogued selected topics, e.g. ventilation, technology, fatigue measurements, energy balance, architecture, morphology. The illustration shows an index card recording measurements and describing tension and relaxation of muscles in an experiment at the University of Chicago. This, you can see the front side, and this is the back side of this photostat card, which played a key role in the work in the laboratory practice. Yeah. Also a key role, as we heard before, played fatigue studies, time studies, motion studies. But also here, Kiesler is working a little bit ambivalent. On the one side, he takes these methods up, on the other side, he neglected these methods. And here you can see a chart, diagram of a single technical operation and its single elements, cutting a tab. So central part, of course, plays the this big chart for showing the synthesis process in design. And what is really interesting on this chart is the fact that Kiesler worked very similar to the later design method movement. He worked also with a mathematical idea behind by reducing and by picking out certain sets, yeah, for here at the nucleus on the left side, the evoluted actions in the middle row, and the co-reality. And this is the morphological chart for the design for the mobile home library. And picking out these three sets, so we can see that function refers to elements such as reactivity, here in the first place, change, time, reduction, tools, actions, cooking. So form, what's form? Refers to elements such as visibility, texture, color, dimensions, assembly, unassembly, e.g. taste, feel, smell. And structure, finally, the third row, refers to elements such as self-maintaining plexiglass, cast flaps, rubber inserts, capacity for units. What you can see here is a clear non-hylomorphic stance on design. That means Kiesler do not follow the great narrative of the European thinking that an active form is informing passive matter. He don't believe in that. He neglected this. And we also have this, at the moment, very strong neglection of this hylomorphic scheme in designing. For example, in the female technosciences, we have very strong works on alternatives on this view, which this view is so very strongly. It does have a very strong, technical momentum for the global north thinking. And here you can see that Kiesler tries to break out this form-matter scheme. And I try to put out one reduction. It's a reduction of the visual effort, and you see that he's really trying to, in a mathematical way, to reduce the elements of these sets from one step to another. Yeah? Finally, coming to a reduction of this visual effort. The illustration shows the relationship between elements of the contributing factor function, stimulation, isolation, stability, and those of form and closure. Design appears to be a process similar to vital organisms, optimizing interaction between organs of a body and their functioning. Synthesis of form means linking elements of function, form, and structure, minimizing the amount of components. And this is a very pre-Christoph Alexander stance, what we see here, and what we have then finally in the design method movement. Finally, the studio laboratory. I'm very fascinated about this picture. I don't know why, but maybe this is Frederick Kiesler himself. I don't know. Maybe Gerald knows it. So I come to my new end, certain connecting point to theories from now, out from the technology, and then I come to my final remarks. So, Kiesler's thinking in technological phases, that is very interesting, and we already heard it. He develops a kind of genetic method of designing. He always thinks the history of things very strongly with, and he implements that. And phases for the moment are very crucial in technology education and design education. I just present 3 of them here, and you know them all because we are in the digital transformation. We have in the first sense the mechanics, the passive machines, and the body techniques, but we also have electrical technologies. And the problem now is every technological phase is building upon each other, and it's a kind of a cascade. It's a cascade. Yeah. So, second step, electrical technology. There have been already a massive transformation in times of automatization and the coming in of electrical technologies, and now we have this a very prominent third phase, information technology. You all know it. This, I think, this may make Kiesler's apparatus very compatible to that what now is discussed in technical and design and architectural education. The next point is the technological individuation. It's a very problematic point. Maybe not so problematic, but Kiesler, as you know it, maybe thought that technical objects make a kind of evolution. And he presented us this evolution chart of knives, of simple technical objects. and there can be found clear evidence that he had a connection to Charles Darwin, to the theory of Darwin. But the problem now with Kiesler is that he also knows the theory of Jean-Baptiste Lamarck. So it's not so easy to say that Kiesler is just a techno-Darwinist. It's not so easy. Because Kevin Kelly showed us what is happening when we really think that technical objects are evolving along lineages. Yeah. It's a problem because the line of lineages is interrupted and stands still for hundreds of years, and it's not so easy to put this in a one-to-one analogy with heredity or Darwinism. So therefore I think that Kiesler's work on technological individuation fits with that what Gilbert Gimondon sets out in his theory of technology and his big apparatus, theoretical apparatus, because he also thinks in technical lineages, but not in a Darwinistic way. Yeah? Just in a fruitful way, and rather more in the way of Jean-Baptiste Lamarck. That means with a connection to the associated milieu and not to the organism itself. Yeah? So the key point is that technological objects do evolve because the milieu is existing out there, yeah? And they are adapting onto this milieu and not evolving because they are internally in a kind of way do have a plan or something. So this is for me a very crucial connecting point, the apparatus from Kiesler with his technological individuation and the philosophy of technology. And also we have seen it, the active object. It is for me very fascinating that an architect and an artist named a process or an object, the active object in these early times. So now we have a big discussion on active objects and following the objects in design theory and in parametricism, of course. We have the active matter movement, we have the new materialism movement, and there are big senses in feminist technology studies give a reason to the material back, yeah, and not there is not everything determined by our brains. So there is a big discussion once again on the non-polymorphic stances and a reclaiming of the Leiblichkeit. Yeah. And especially in these times, in climate changes and so on, the integration of a milieu can be very interesting, and also the assuming that objects can also be active in a way, as you see here, for example, a biofact according to Nicole Karafilis. So yes, associated milieu, a key concept of Frederick Kiesler, and indeed it is a very strong concept, especially for digital design theory, for example, and everything what now is happening in designing. Yeah. There is a very strong recurrence on milieu, on the milieu of technical objects. And it started also with, in times of Christopher Alexander, with the context, every form, not as a figurative form, just as a materials, raw materials for design processes. Every material needs a kind of a context, a kind of a associated milieu. And my last connecting point is I would like to finish with Donna Haraway, because her thinking is very fruitful, and I'm very happy that Kiesler's thinking can be compared and with her stance on the superiesis. And these drawings from Kiesler I think they are pictures for recursive design processes, for recursions, pictures for recursions, for extremely feedback mechanisms, extremely. Something you have similar in the Symposium, where both entities are working and fitting together into one entity. And also the circle of design processes, Kiesler is a precursor here for Jamayev and Alexander, also in their early design theories. Yeah, thank you very much. So.